This is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad here in the studio in London. It's very rainy today or this evening and overcast as well. Hopefully, I've got Gregory. Are you there, Gregory?
Hello.
Welcome, Gregory. And I'm expecting Mena as well, but he's not available at this moment, I can see. So, oh, yes, he is. Mena, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome, welcome. Gregory,
Yeah.
please tell us where you are and how is the weather where you are?
It's just cool here in Brussels.
Okay, it's cool. And there's Mena there. Mena, where are
Yeah,
you? Where are you
yeah, it's a
today?
bit wet here in the heartland. It's wet, and yeah, everybody's indoor now.
Okay, it's wet, wet, like here in London. Okay, welcome to the show. So, dear listeners, this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And as usual, we have a new topic every week. The topic for discussion tonight is unprecedented events and times. That's unprecedented events and times. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here is 079 444 That's a UK number. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 004479 31366. I'm going to start with what is the Grail message? The Grail message, in the light of truth by Abdrushin, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation to the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdrushin. Oh, Mena,
Yes,
you're playing it in the
yeah,
background live radio, and we can hear
yeah.
you.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
okay.
please don't. Yeah,
Turn it down.
yeah. Thank you, because they can't hear me then. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. So I'd like to give you a couple of quotes, listeners, from the author of the Grail message, Abdrushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with seven seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for discussion tonight is unprecedented events and times. And why I've chosen this title today, basically, we're seeing so many things in the world in recent times. It's like, you could say there's sort of extreme things happening, and people are like very strong in their views, and and fighting each other. This is in politics we are seeing, and let's say in general as well. The tolerance seems to have gone down to accept each other as we are, and it's like there seems to be some sort of nastiness around it, and I don't know if there's like a, let's say, people's standards are falling down. There's some sort of decency, descent into sort of everything's acceptable now, and there's not worried about what the consequences are. So, Gregory, I'd like to start with the first question, and just to say, are we actually living in these what I've called unprecedented events and times? Is that what we are going through now?
Strictly speaking, I would not really say that.
Okay.
That is unprecedented, because in the past there have been worse occurrences leading to world wars and all sort of things like that. So, and that is why it's very difficult to speak in that particular tone. However, there are clearly events which, particularly in the UK, if one is referring to the political arena, which really might not have happened in the past. But in general, in the world of politics, you will find that there are many things happening in the so-called leading democracies, and they have a sort of turbulence in the way that the leaders behave. But sometimes to call such unprecedented may be the use of an extreme language, because human spirits have their decisions. They make decisions every day. And in the past, there had been all sorts in different countries where these leaders have quietly coerced the people and paved the way to wars. So in that sense, one might say that. But it's very... one can only talk now about the political scenarios. There are other scenarios which one hasn't observed enough to classify events as unprecedented.
Okay, I've got another one which is not political. How about the climate? Because, in fact, we mentioned it last week, because a lot of the people have been protesting in a very strong manner, the young people especially. Maybe they, they're young, and so maybe, they're thinking, oh, there's going to be a real disaster, and, what future they have got. So they may be having a, let's say, a biased view of their future. And so people are just viewing things, if I use that, from their own angle and not realizing, the bigger picture. Would climate change be something unprecedented? That, or is that also something, like you say, is not so unprecedented, as we've had serious things before?
My query is with the expression unprecedented, because when one examines very carefully, there have been times in this on this planet Earth where there had been extreme climate phenomena. It could have been about 10, 12,000 years ago. Typically, I mean, if one looks back and the changes during the time of Atlantis, these things are well recorded. Before then, there were other, when the earth was still maturing, before human spirits even came to experience it, there have been all sorts of changes, all sorts of climate changes. So there have been scenarios which were even worse than what one is reflecting on. So because these scenarios have been documented and have existed, it is difficult to now say that this climate change, which of course could be in recent times, over the past 100 or 200 years, one could say that the consequences of our activities on Earth, because of the way we use the resources, these consequences or the use of the activities are unprecedented. Because in the past, it wasn't like that. The population of the Earth wasn't like that. So one may interpret them that way.
Actually, that's what I was going to go to next, because at least you can say the population is unprecedented, because we never had such a 7-8 billion people before, and the consumption, you can just imagine, is massive. And although we seem to have some technology to grow the food for people, I know there are people still suffering and starving somewhere, but in the most, people are able to continue. But then they're producing so much waste, and we are not really, although we've heard of recycling and all that, it seems the waste is not really being dealt properly, with so many people. As I said, that would be unprecedented, the amount of waste that we are producing than before. So there is something like that happening.
Of course, one agrees that in these times we have so-called technology to produce so much food to ensure everyone is well fed. And at the same time, that is not the case. There is so much food, but a lot of it is just wasted for one reason or the other. But again, these are the consequences, or these are human beings making decisions to ensure that they have maximum profits. And whoever hasn't got the resources to pay for these foods will have to go hungry. In some other scenarios, they just deprive others for one reason or the other, just start a war so that people will suffer. So these things are there, but these are human decisions. And there's very little one can do other than to ensure that the way one lives, the hard lessons one has learned, one does not impact it on others without the necessary lessons are learned.
And what I'd like to say, another thing for me, which looks definitely unprecedented, is the speed of technology. We're having new things coming out very regularly. Obviously, we know about internet with mobile phones in our own time that we've seen. Before there was no TV, no radio. All this technology has come in the recent time. Traveling, planes. We never had planes until the last century started there, and so new things are coming out all the time. And the scale, obviously every time there's new things. As long as man has been there, there's always some new thing coming, or even we say in evolution, there's always some new creatures coming. But the thing is, this things are getting more complex in these new sort of technologies, and as we know, there's some side effects. With mobile phone, there's radiation. I know things are sort of better now. They've managed to bring it out, but then there's also the life. Before, let's say there was, husband and wife and family. Let's say the wife would stay at home and be the mother and look after the kids and look after the home. And now it's like both husband and wife, or couples, let's call them, or families. Both the couples, adults, are working, and the kids are sort of out in the streets. Not all of them, of course. So it's like there is been a shift. I know that's not so recent, I can admit that, but in this last century, there has been a major shift like that, and it's bringing out stresses on people, the work-life balance. People say they're tired, they're as I said, stressed out, and things like that, and even the children. They seem to feel pressure with exams, and it seems like, although nothing is new in the terms of, you can say, what we used to do before, we're still doing that type of thing. We still need to eat food, we still need a home, we still need to get a job, but somehow there's something, people are not handling it so well. So is there some sort of, people have lost their ways somehow? And yeah, is there some changes that have happened in the way man lives?
Well, we keep stressing that many have made their decisions, and of the many, there are also groups, which groups one may refer to as governments. And because of the way they have made their decision in a one-sided manner, these become the consequences. Like we said, there is enough food to go around, but many don't, or governments or certain bodies don't want that to happen, because they want people to pay for it, one reason or the other, even within the same country. Some supermarkets will prefer to put their food, just put it away, or incinerate it, or take it to the bin. With regards to families, again, is personal human decisions. There are some families where decisions have been made that one will go out to work, whereas the other takes care of the children. So these are personal decisions which people have made. As long as these decisions are not in accordance with the laws of existence, then you have this short-sightedness in the way people do things. And the returns is such that people are crushed, because the returns are such that before long they wouldn't know what to do or how to proceed, because they're only just thinking of how to survive on a day-to-day basis. They're not thinking on the long term. Like we said, the returns come back to affect the way they think, the way they live, and many other things. So one has to first look at the human volition and the reasons behind what they do.
Thank you for that. Menna, did you want to say anything?
No, I think that's okay. That's we can carry on.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to completely disagree with you, Gregory, but I think there are changes going on, unprecedented than maybe you are saying. For me, yes, if you want to compare World War, I can agree with that. We're not having a World War, but I think the speed of changes are actually people are not handling those. On the surface, it looks like we are progressing, but really, let's say there's still build-up of tension between peoples in the countries, and so a lot of inequalities. You could, if I use that way, and at one point there will be some explosion. I think what's happening is some of these, because let's say there's little bit of grace or little bit of where they can release their pressure, let's say, in a mild way, then it doesn't explode into a big revolution and things like that. But I think it's still there is what maybe is happening is man is learning to adapt to the changes through the technology, so sorting things out. But what you cannot be sure right now is will they adapt according, as you said, Gregory, with the laws of existence? Are they are applying sciences, of course, always developing new things to, and of course those things have to work with the laws of existence, otherwise it can't work. But are they doing it, let's say, for everybody's benefit, in time for everybody to grow, or not? I would say not everywhere. It's just happening in some places, and there is a lot of I don't want to use this word inequality, but basically it's if I were to say it's just not the sharing of these benefits is not all over the world. It's simply some places, let's say, maybe the well-off are getting better. That's what people complain a lot. The rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And that seems to be the case for many people, whether you're in the West or whether you're in the, somewhere else. And so, and that
Actually,
that leads to extreme things.
Actually, if one had referred to the beginning of last century, where there were massive changes in the government, when there were wars, there was famine, people were just perishing like flies. Places like the Soviet Union, places like Germany, places like the US, there were all sorts of things. There was famine everywhere. And around 1929, there was the crash. These things were so preponderant at that time. So, and human spirits were just making decisions, didn't know how they were going. And there were real changes almost in every country. Now things have, to a large extent, stabilized. It's as if that was a beginning and it hasn't ended yet. There are changes, but at that time, the changes were revolutionary. So when one looks at these things, one can also say that even right now, there is so much that has been learned in science, yet the basic problems remain. Right now, you can go for vaccination, and so many diseases, are taken care of. At that time, that was not the case, right? And so it was just too much, and the pressure. There was a lot of pressure on, but the cause of that pressure, what lies behind that pressure, many did not understand. Even now, many have adjusted to the challenges, but the pressure is still there. The motive of this pressure, why it is there, is what many have not contended with. And that is the problem. Until a person or a group of persons or a nation or group of nations adjust themselves and their activities to the laws of existence through which they themselves came into activity, then there will be confusion and fear, whether it be political upheavals that you find in countries nowadays or some other thing. It is basically the same thing.
Thank you for that. You're making me, or you're pointing to that we really need to wake up to what is, our purpose in a way. And because, like you say, we need to understand these laws of existence to, what actually, how we are meant to live and all that, and those things until, otherwise it's just like going through the motions of, our daily living, just feeding ourselves and so on. And
Okay.
what, Mena, you want to come in?
Yeah. I think Gregory has tried to set a context, for discussions that, compared to previous times, in recent times, we do feel an enormous pressure to go about, fulfilling our daily needs, which never existed maybe some 10 years ago. And this pressure, which we feel that makes us, very active, can be regarded, as, unprecedented. And, in explaining what is driving this motion, I think that is is good. Gregory has, made thrown some light on it.
Okay.
You get the point. I mean, yeah.
Yes. So let's move to that then, and what is it? Um, we should be, how can I say, striving for, because you know, is this life on the earth? Is that what it's all about, or is there more? And this is a spiritual program, so we need to ask what is are we here for? And Gregory, you mentioned about the laws, that laws of existence. So maybe we need to become familiar with these laws. And so, yeah, Gregory, would you tell us more? What should we be striving for?
Thanks for that question. Actually, there has always been guidance on how things should be, even from so-called religious point of views, or to some extent scientific, or so-called scientific point of view. But these points of views are not at the same time equivalent to the laws of nature through which all that exists, through which all we are able to perceive with our senses, came into existence. These particular laws, which hold for everything, be it our thoughts, be it in science, be it in so-called biology, be it in the smallest particle, these laws exist. They themselves do not change, but they condition the continuity, the existence of all others. One of the basic laws, which one may refer to here, is that of resonance. When one hears of resonance, basically one is talking about the law of the attraction of similarity. When those things which have the same motives, they are attracted. To talk about it in a spiritual way, one may call this the law of the attraction of homogeneity, or of the law of attraction of homogeneous species. It has so much ramification, for two things are attracted if and only if they resonate. Else, they will just pass each other by without having an effect. So one may hear like father, like son, like mother, like daughter, and similar thoughts, birds of a feather. These are only expressions which many have perceived and used in explaining or in discussing that law of the attraction of homogeneity. On the other hand, there is a second one, and that is the so-called law of reciprocal action. When the expression reciprocal action is mentioned, it only means there must have been an action before there is a reciprocity of that action. That is how creation has always been. So when you put something out there, there is a reciprocal activity which will return to you. The manifestations of this particular law, which is one of the cornerstones of creation, ensures justice, ensures balance, ensures perfection, such that it applies, not only does it apply to the smallest particle, but it also applies to our thoughts. It applies to everything where there is an activity or where there is the initiation of an activity. So there comes in the reciprocal activity. This ensures even continuity, for one can imagine if there were no reciprocal activity, how would one know that what one has done is correct or not correct? There is a third law which has arisen due to the cooling off or due to density. That which is very dense is heavy, and that which is less dense rises. This particular law applies not only to what we observe physically here on earth or in the world of matter, but it also applies to our thoughts. Whenever we carry out some activity which is to help others to succeed or to help others to be of use to other people, we feel lighter. Whereas when we carry out activities which sort of oppress others, we sense that inner heaviness, although most of the time we dismiss it. So there is the universal law of spiritual gravitation. By spirit, one is referring to the inner core of man, that energy that controls, that activates the physical body, that energy that is the motive for man existing here on earth in order to experience.
Thank you, Gregory, for your answer there. I'm going to ask something more on it, but before I do that, I just want to tell listeners you're listening to Blessradio. This is the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And if you're interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or want some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is unprecedented events and times, although it looks like it's not so unprecedented as we might have thought. But anyway, you are welcome to join us with any question or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Mena, did you want to come in?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Gregory, for explaining the laws. I'm also thinking that in order for us not to deviate from the topic, stray away from the topic too far, can we now look at 10 years back? Like when I came to the heartland, things were not. People were still relaxing on, still had good times on Fridays. There was not lots of commercial activities on Fridays. I mean, the work period ended on Fridays, but now you can see that into Saturdays and Sundays. You can see people are beginning to use up these days to work. So I think that there's some changes happening, although we don't want to acknowledge it. But yeah, there is a lot of changes that are now happening. People make use of Saturdays and Sundays to work, and people do not actually mark out these time as times of rest anymore. How do you see them? How do you see it, Gregory? Don't you think it's becoming what you might describe as unprecedented? And why do you think such changes are coming into effect?
Well, thanks for that particular question. One must be very honest with oneself. And we're talking about the past 10 years. Initially, there were factories all over a place or a country like Britain. And decisions were made to move, were made by certain groups to move these factories to different countries where labor was much cheaper. And once that happened, the country like Britain had to rely on the financial services. That being the case, many people who were low skilled, who didn't have enough skills to compete on a global scale, had to rely on what remained on the very lower scale. So, to make ends meet, they themselves have to rummage here and there, trying to find work. So whatever was available, whether it was on a Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Saturday, they didn't bother. Just to make ends meet, they had to take it on. That was what happened, because the so-called manufacturing was moved into other countries. One may not say that here, in Europe, things happen differently. So what you observe there is a local phenomenon. But that doesn't mean that the pressure is not on. You will find in different localities, be them countries, leaders make decisions which have adverse effect on the people. But when these decisions are made, they were only made on spur of the moment. It wasn't a strategic view that will benefit the constituents of the country. It was a very narrow view made for the sake of profit. Whenever you have such things, then you find that many or leaders of industry or communities have made a decision. Before too long, there will be returns, which returns may also be the consequences. That is what many are experiencing in that heartland that you mentioned, because there are newer technologies and within the country, no plan was put in place, or many did not make the opportunity, did not develop themselves to be able to compete with others for that which they had always relied on, which are the local petty jobs, have now been taken away to other countries where labor, so-called, is much, much cheaper. And the irony of it was these things were now manufactured and brought back to this same country, and they had to procure it with the bits which they themselves had. So, as with everything, man is free to make their decisions, but they are then subject to the consequences. They are also subject to the returns of these decisions again and again.
Gregory, you mentioned earlier about the laws of existence, and you mentioned they're universal, and if they work spiritually and also in the earthly, and yet on the earthly, we seem to, let's say, not really say that they don't seem to be working so fairly, if I can say, or the human beings don't seem to be able to, um, let's say, work in line with these laws. I mean, we make our own laws, earthly laws, but it doesn't seem to align, let's say, with these laws of existence. So, are we lacking something that we can't work with these laws? Because although we haven't mentioned nature today too much, we do say these laws of existence are the natural laws as well. And somehow, is there something missing in us human beings that we cannot work with nature or with the natural laws or the laws of existence, while the other plants and animals and so on, they seem to be, where they're able to, they're able to, grow and work okay. But the rest of us human beings seems to be either we are missing something or we just can't seem to apply them. So is there something missing with us?
Yes, there is the human intuition. As long as decisions are not carefully made using the human intuition, then the scenarios that we are now in is what abounds. For it is the human intuition, or it is the intuition that is able to make those decisions which are far-reaching, which are beneficial. Whenever you have a gathering and people, or those people in the gathering, form their opinions only on the earthly, only on the possibility of profits, of money, without due regards to the human spirit, then this is what happens. They make their decisions based on what they have just seen. And the problem is, how can you predict a human spirit based on what you have just observed? The inner talents of the human spirits are manifold. Unless you provide the opportunity for the human spirit to develop its talent, then you yourself are violating the laws that made it possible for you to sort of use your innate talent for the good of the society. In a society, you have those who internally are gifted in the so-called intellectually scientific way. In a society, you have those who are gifted in an artistic way. These have to be brought into the whole equation and not one-sidedly push some aside and say, oh, this one, he can't do anything, or it's no good. For it is not by chance that many a person had to incarnate in a particular society or in the neighborhood of a particular society. So when decisions are made, these decisions should take into consideration the innate capabilities of many a person and not sweep this aside. When decisions are made, they should be made based on many an intuition, which at the initial stage may seem hard, but with continuous practice will seem the normal way of doing things. But once these are pushed aside, then problems abound. Problems abound before too long, because then you'll find that, yes, the so-called investor has made so much paper money. But then what happens? He or she can have a deal with his society and not even pay any tax, which tax is necessary to be able to support others who, like himself, have come into this part of the earth in order to experience and also support the society. Check out the activities of man. In some societies, what you find, they will say, no, you can only have one child. In others, they put so many conditions. But before long, they start growing old. And when they start growing old, they start wondering, okay, who is going to take care of us when we are old? Because there are so many deaths along the line. In another society, they will say, oh, others shouldn't come in. But again, many people are growing old. So you find the decisions which are made by so-called many intelligent people are only based on knee-jerk reaction. There's no deep reflection as to the good of the society on the long run. Because what you find is that the man who has access to finance is the king, not that particular personality who is artistically talented or so-called scientifically talented. So these are the challenges which we have. And we make these decisions. Before long, that person finds that so much resources is concentrated in the hand of one person.
Thank you
Now you
so
have to ask yourself, how can there be happiness amongst others when only one person has access to all these resources and controls it, and others only dance around hungry?
Thank you so much, Gregory. You've covered so much there, especially about making decisions. And one thing I thought about when you said that, um, we are the ones making the decisions, but the people, there are leaders, there's the citizens, you can say, and where there's democracy, you know, people choose through the election for their leaders, even though there's still organizations, powerful organizations, sort of donating to these parties and so on. But overall, it's still decided by the people. Now, what I want to ask you really, the people who are making decisions, everybody's making a decision, of course, especially if you're talking about government here now, so the leaders, let's say. Um, are they the qualified to be the leaders, let's say, and are the people qualified to pick the leaders? Because it takes two to tango. You cannot just have people. The leaders are coming from their own people. So even if they're the most talented, it's still the same people in the end. So what I want to ask you, the people who are leaders in whatever the government, or even let's say in companies with technology and whatever, or those who are trying to make profit, are they qualified to be the leaders, to make to make these decisions?
Well, when you said the word, are they qualified? One may view that from an intellectual point of view and also from a spiritual point of view. From an intellectual point of view, the motives are well hidden. From a spiritual point of view, the motives are not hidden, for it is the motive that determines whether an activity is in accordance with the laws of creation or not. So, who is able to penetrate the depth that many a politician has hidden his or her true motive? Only much later do many then realize the motives. One can easily give an example. Germany, for an example, the beginning of the last century, where there were so much problems, they became vulnerable. And in that situation, they couldn't see the motives of him who was cutting them. They wanted to fill their stomach. They wanted immediate order. And then came someone who promised them things they couldn't even dream of. And they fell for it, and they granted him their loyalty. That only lasted for 12 years. The country that had been striving intellectually and spiritually were reduced to rubble because they were only looking at the surface. That which is of spirit was not observed. Why? Because they did not allow what they were saying to sink from their frontal brain to the back brain and straight to the spirit. They did not allow their intuition to be alive. The same can be said of many a nation who, for one reason or the other, do not allow their intuition to come to the forefront. Before long, such a nation falls into a quagmire because many a person can hide their true motive, realizing that many others are only very superficial human spirits. They do not make enough effort to see beyond what is physical, to experience beyond what is physical. Had they allowed their intuition to be more active, many of these things which are put forward as deceptions would not have happened, for they would have seen the motives of many who come before them.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for that. Mena, you wanted to say something?
Okay, yeah. Well, just to link it to our topic, I would like Gregory to tell us, how these decisions which we make intellectually impact on our present time, and how we can actually get out of or make better decisions for the future.
When it is said make better decisions for the future,
Yeah.
what one is referring to, what's referred to in that particular scenario is let your spirit come alive. Examine all that comes across you, whether it be joy, happiness, or deep sorrow. Let it sink. Examine it spiritually. Only from that point of view can you now calmly and gradually make a decision, which decision must also accord with that of continuity, which is provided with the laws of creation or the laws of nature, which themselves do not change, such that the benefits of the returns will last very long. What has always happened is that you have decisions which satisfy your needs or your wants right now. And then tomorrow, you have to make other ones. And one may say these are tactical. Okay, I take this step today, fair enough. And then when tomorrow comes, I have to make changes again. So you keep just making changes and changes and changes because you cannot see much deeper. So whoever needs to make decisions for himself or for nations or whatever must first examine what exists. Examine not only intellectually, as many do, but also examine using one's intuition. It is because many did not examine using one's intuition or spiritual abilities that has always been the root of the problem. As soon as one allows the intuition to come into real activity, many of the problems or many of the challenges which are faced intellectually will vanish.
Thank you, Gregory, for your
Yeah.
answer there. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessradio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program, and the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And if you're interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or would like some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic for discussion tonight is unprecedented events and times. If you have any questions or comments, please contact this UK number, which is 079 444 31366. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Mena, I think you wanted to come in.
Yes, yeah. Gregory, thanks for your explanations. Do you see these present time having any effect? Does it have anything to do with the purification of the earth? You know, this period of what we could, term the millennium, the onset of the millennium. Is there any link to recent times, to the onset of the millennium or the purification of the earth?
Many a thing which is observed physically are likely to have their origin on a spiritual point of view. On a spiritual point of view, yes. But what you see happening physically, many of these things do not have bearings. What happens actually is that there is a pressure, which pressure has arisen one way or the other from forces, from activities in creation, in which there should be a closure. A closure, that means the beginning or the end has to go back to the beginning, as you have in the case of a clock. Like was mentioned in the law of reciprocity, that law which defines time already gives the impression of a closure. And when we now have a closure imminent, then many an event will have to round up. That already gives a very strong impression that many things, be they also human spirits, who, through their activities, need to experience the decisions they have made in the past, the seeds, the threats they have spun in the past. They need to experience it. They need to experience the returns here on earth, because they might have initiated those threats here on earth, or part of it. And because of that pressure, you now have many coming back. That, to some extent, is why you have the preponderance of many human spirits or human beings now on earth. That in itself is unprecedented. So, from a spiritual standpoint of view, it is understandable why you have this so-called population explosion. But one must only understand these things from a spiritual standpoint of view. What has just been discussed is only a token. For many, a listener, it is best if they will make time to examine the work in the light of truth, the grail message. There, all that they need to know is revealed, such that they can use their own intuition to traverse the universe, to experience the universe, whilst even here on earth, such that many a thing which surprises one, many a physical manifestation becomes understandable as to why these things are happening. Otherwise, it's as if they are going through the earth in a blind fashion, and many things will become like a mystery. You cannot explain why these things happen. But the walk in the light of truth can help as a guide, or as a map, or as a touch for them to be able to sift, and the confusion which has been spawned by the intellect is then minimized.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. So you see some light at the end of the tunnel. Well, there could be true happiness for anyone who, I mean, obeys the laws of creation. Would that be correct to imply?
To use the word or expression light at the end of the tunnel, automatically, for one who swings in the laws of creation, from a spiritual standpoint, that person is granted the opportunity to be able to draw of the strengths and of the gifts which creation makes available. For strictly speaking, there is help everywhere. To use the word or the expression light at the end of the tunnel, there is always light. It is man that has not opened himself, and that is why he or she is waiting for things at the end of the tunnel. For as soon as man opens himself or herself, then the help which is his due becomes available. He doesn't have to wait and suffer. That only happens when he or she needs to redeem all that he or she has put into creation. He needs to taste of it. If, however, he has, in the meantime, built up himself or herself in such a way that the returns, which are unfavorable, when they do come back, he has built an atmosphere around himself or herself. These unfavorable radiations are greatly diminished, just as you have the surrounding atmosphere on the earth, such that a meteor coming is burnt away. If, however, he or she has not used his intuition, has not developed himself or herself to such an extent that when the returns come, they are reinforced, with the same wrong volition and wickedness, then those returns tend to drag him or push him deeper into the mire. For such, talking about light at the end of the tunnel doesn't work, because the returns is not a guarantee that that person has redeemed all that he or she needs to. The key thing here is the individual. There is the need to so refine yourself such that you are able to make connection with all the help that is available, which is one's due in accordance with the love and the will and the power which has been placed for the help of man.
Yeah. A quick question. Why can't man's intellect alone suffice? I mean, can we not apply more science to our present problems and, get solutions, more solutions, and, get out of this quagmire you're talking about? Why can't man's, intellect alone suffice? And, science.
One must ask oneself that question. What is the seat of the intellect? The seat of the intellect is in the brain, basically the frontal brain. Before the human soul incarnated, there was no physical brain. So, how can one use that which is limited, which is constrained to the concepts of earthly space and earthly time? You cannot use that to solve the problems which are beyond those concepts, those returns which swing in creation. You cannot use these limited concepts to solve that big one. So it is the spirit that is alive within the human soul. And therefore, the problem must be sorted out physically, spiritually. When you mention science, science basically is a product of the understanding of the human brain. So, the science one is referring to is that of medicine, is that of physics, is that of biology. These are very cramped. They are still going through research, transformation. So they cannot grasp that which exists above them. Therefore, you cannot use so-called science to find a solution to it.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I'm wondering, of course, we are bringing awareness of the Grail message to everybody as a spiritual knowledge. Is there other help in terms of somebody, like a person, sort of directing mankind or people in how to practice, you could say, the knowledge of the Grail message? Or are we just left on our own to just, do our best, you could say? So, yes.
These are questions which abounds in many circles. Are we left on our own? Here we have the walk in the light of truth. Shouldn't we first make an effort to understand it aright? Only when one has made the effort to understand it aright, and make use of it in all circumstances, then you have as a repercussion that inner clarity and fluidness, such that there is the inner purification. Purification in the sense that one becomes alive. One examines all that comes to one. One is always on the watchfulness, and being watchful, one is also able to perceive of the power that streams through creation, and one uses that power to do that which one senses in accordance with the laws of creation, or one may say the laws of nature, but to be more precise, in accordance with the divine laws. Only in such a pattern can one purify oneself. In that case, the walk in the light of truth makes it very clear. If, however, one is waiting for others to come and teach him what he must do, and with a big cane or with all sort of things, that will not happen. Why? Because man has free will. Man must decide to be. Man that has started as a spirit seed grain, unconscious. And to be means to be able to develop those innate qualities which have been implanted into it. Means to become self-conscious in accordance with the laws of creation. That is personal. That is what it means. That's what it means to be. So if man must be, it has to swing in accordance with the will of his creator, who first granted him the opportunities to come into existence. So it's an exercise of the free will of man. No one is coming to bring a stick and say, this is what you must do. For through the exercise of the free will, if it is done in accordance for self-improvement and purification, the help that man needs will become automatically available, because he or she will recognize that help. If he or she refuses to act in such a way as to recognize the help, then it will eliminate itself by not observing enough and knowing how to make use of it. That is personal decision.
Thank you again, Gregory. I'm thinking that there's, let's say, many, let's say, teachings or practices out there, and obviously you said you should examine everything, you know, and obviously test it out, see if it works or not. Sometimes you find there are many similar things, because for example we are talking about intuition, use your intuition, and others are also saying similar things. But then there's sometimes you find, although there's much similar things, and at some point some people claim, oh, we can become divine or divinities in us, and and you just follow that, just without, how can I say, being aware if it's going where it's going. So, and I've seen recently some people talking like this. You know, on the surface, it all makes sense. Actually, when you assess it, oh yes, maybe there is, I'm a human being, I'm a spirit, I'm a soul, and then this is the next level I can achieve. But I just don't know it yet because I need to go out there first. So, um, because people believe we are all one, from the top right to the down, it's all one. And then others are saying, oh no, you are this species, and then there's another species there, and there's another species there, and we are separate. So how can one really realize that? How can we come really knowing that? Because it sort of makes sense when both ideas, if I can say it that way, both ideas or concepts seem to make sense, but they're not compatible. You know, um, you can say we are, like I said, there's a oneness. You feel like, we should harmonize and we should work that way, and then another one says no. The Creator created this, created us, and other things, and we cannot unite, uh, become one, like with the Creator. So, with these are different ideas, how do we really be sure, which one is the right one?
Again, that's a very good question. One must first allow these questions to assail. When these questions assail any particular person, it only means they should open up, not only intellectually, but also using their intuition, allow these questions to penetrate to the spirit such that they themselves will experience that which they must experience to become convinced. In many matters, superficiality rules. They ask questions. But one should never forget that personality that asks a question is on a quest, hence the expression question. And if you are on a quest, it means you need to strengthen yourself. You need to strengthen yourself in going for a quest. You must be prepared for the challenges in weighing, in examining, not only intellectually, but also intuitively, spiritually. It is the most difficult thing to examine intuitively or spiritually when you have not been practicing gradually this. What then happens when something assails you? You look at it from an intellectual point of view and you let it go. And you based your conclusions on that. One basic question which each person must ask themselves and must be honest is that they themselves are not the origin of themselves, that they were born to this in this earth, that what they see exists have always been here even before they incarnated, that what they see physically must have been there before they came in. because they had parents and their parents had parents. And for the continuity of the parentage backwards, a power has always been there. Which power made it possible that this power has always existed, and therefore they themselves could not be of this power? Have they ever asked themselves the source of this power? Once they start asking the source of this power, which power they use not only in their physical well-being, but also in their spiritual well-being, then gradually many will be led step by step to or towards the origin of this power until they will arrive at a particular point where they themselves cannot go further. There where they can be conscious. Then such questions as divinity will vanish from within them, and humility will dawn on them. But many don't ask any question. They accept. Where do they then use their free will to examine, to weigh? None. So the problem is personal, not most of the views that you have there. In light of this, one will want to read something very, very simple. At the beginning of the work, the author of the message made it very clear. Free yourself from all darkness. He who makes no effort to grasp the word of the Lord aright burdens himself with guilt. It already says one needs to make effort. If you cannot make any effort, how can you gain anything? If you just accept the views that are thrown out there, you don't examine them, how would you know that which is right? So this calls for personal effort. Let each one bother with himself and ask himself real questions, and not just accept that because it makes sense or it seems to make sense, it must be right. Intellectually, it might seem so. Spiritually, it's far from it.
Thank you, Gregory, for that sort of detailed answer. Dear listeners, you're listening to Blessradio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. And if you're interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or want some more information, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is unprecedented events and times. You can join in the discussion with any question or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 31366. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. I just want to let you know, listeners, that you can listen to us on these channels. Basically, it's blessradio.org. That's one website. The other one is you can go to tunein.com and then search for Bless FM. And these are for live shows. You can listen there. And also on YouTube, you can also listen live. Just go type on youtube.com Blessradio 1 live stream. That's 2 words. Blessradio 1 space live stream. And then 10 minutes after the show, you can listen to the recording of any show actually. But this live show you can listen after 10 minutes. And what you need to do then is again on youtube.com, you type in Blessradio 1 and then type the grail message, GRAIL, message, MESSAGE, and then put the topic of the show. For example, tonight is unprecedented events and times. So you can listen to the recording afterwards. Gregory,
Okay.
before you start saying something, I just want to follow something on that, what you've been saying, Gregory. You said the intuition is our guide, to assess these things, spiritually, and but obviously, it is not so, let's say, sharp or refined for many of us. We are too much, let's say, intellectual in our thinking. So, is there a way we can refine or improve our intuition? What can we do? Because just that last question I asked, some people think we can become divine, and others say no, that's not possible. We are each is a different species. You cannot just change your species. And you said you have to put the effort, to get there. So, is there some way for us to sharpen our intuition? That we can actually, really appreciate and grasp, life's issues.
Of course, there is a way. The only way there is to use it again and again and again and again. For what you do not use, consider the case of a language. If you are very fluent in English and you do not speak the language, you do not use the language, after 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, what will then become of you when you want to express yourself in communications with other people? You will definitely be convinced that due to lack of use, many a thing will not register. However, if one uses the intuition again and again, not only in personal, but also in impersonal occurrences, not only in local, but also in global. When one examines anything, then in due course, step by step, gradually, one will come to a right conclusion. One will then proceed modestly, not trying to find out everything at once, but in bits. For creation or nature grants to many a person tokens. When you follow these tokens through one's observation, then it is then possible to gradually sharpen one's intuitive faculty. At the same time, one has to be mindful on one's diet, such that one does not go, as you will find, to take in or inject some such substances which will disturb the body rhythm, such that the body is unable to vibrate accordingly so as to harmonize with the spirit. Some of the things we take in as food could be poisonous, but it is left for man to make a decision. But the key thing is that the strong volition, the strong unbending volition must be there. There is also the need for persistence. Persistence with the strong and good volition. It might be challenging. Of course it must be challenging. But with step by step, gradually one will get there. For as soon as the good volition sets in, which good volition must have arisen as a motive force deep within the spirit, then help is already awaiting the man, such that he or she will experience some form of purification, not in a fraction of a second, but gradually. Some of it could be days or months, or could be weeks, or could be years. There are many, it may take a whole lifetime. As long as that good and firm volition is there, one is striving towards the goal, and many a help will be available for one to make use of. The problem is always, once one wants to do that which is helpful and of good volition, and there are challenges, they just give up. Yet these same people will want to go and watch football and call themselves football fans. They want to see a place where there is vigorous activity, where there are challenges, good defense. But when it concerns others, it is okay. When it concerns themselves, they give up. Without persistence, good volition, how can you then arrive there? This is what each person must strive to do. The walk in the light of truth will be a faithful accompaniment along that direction.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
Gregory. Mena, you
Yeah.
wanted to say something?
Yes, I do. I do. Can I come in with this little digression? I mean, let's talk about these unprecedented times and events, in regards to the world population. Now, the world population stands at about, 7.7 billion persons. It is predicted that by the year 2030, it might be about 8.6, and then in the year 2050, it might be about 9.8. Now, the uppermost limit population, that the Earth can sustain stands at about, 10 billion persons. Now, can I ask this question? This world population growth, is it a good thing? I mean, from a spiritual point of view. And then what would the world be like if the population continues to grow? I mean, as of now, you can see the types of food we eat. We eat chicken, that could, usually a chicken would grow for maybe 7 months, maybe a year before you kill it. But you have what do you call them now? Agric hens or agric cocks that are forced to grow within how many months or weeks now? About 10 weeks or 15 weeks, and they are fed to us they're put to us to feed on. What is the future going to be like? And is this encouraging from a spiritual point of view? I know you're just trying to share light, you're not trying to draw mankind's attention to the grand message, but is world population explosion or increase a good thing?
When such questions are asked, the questions must be examined. Is it a good thing intellectually or a good thing spiritually? These are two different views. So, intellectually, there are challenges. Spiritually, is it good that there is world population, this explosion, like you put it? Why is it that there is so much here on earth? Had the human spirit been hidden the laws of creation and doing that which they need to do, they would then need to come here to experience that which they need and quickly go back and continue on their journey home. That is not the case. That creates some imbalance. An opportunity, one way or the other, is then granted to them to experience. So the question is, why is man not learning that which he needs in order to move forward? The laws of creation keep on its operational path. The walls of matter is not going to be here forever. The world of matter is transient. And with all that belongs to the world of matter, by which we mean the human body, they all belong to the world of matter. Because the world of matter is transient, it means it has come into existence, is being maintained, then in due course it will undergo disintegration. And for those human spirits who make use in order to experience of the structures in the world of matter, if they are unable to sever themselves and arise spiritually, heading home, they themselves will have to experience that disintegration. It means, therefore, they were too heavy, and the structure, which is the likeness of man, the structure, the likeness of their creator, will now be shattered, will now disintegrate, and they will have to go back home as unconscious spirit gems, like they started, without a personality. That is only a brief picture. As to, is it a good thing When human spirits, instead of making progress, come back to the same spot to experience, it is a very bad thing, because that is not what is willed for many spiritually. The idea or the purpose is for man to come, experience that which they need to experience, and move away very quickly. That you have this massive accumulation only tells you that they haven't learned the necessary lesson. So one must view such questions from both parts. What you see physically and it's being judged intellectually is only a consequence of man's activities, of man's decision. And the question which is attached to it is the earth able to sustain? Many of these questions must be looked at from a spiritual standpoint of view. The earth will do the best it can. Many an intellectual will do the best they can, thinking that the best, that suffice. But even before going, say, to 2050, more than half of the food which is produced, what happens to it? It goes to waste. So, when you reflect on it very carefully, if that food were now plowed back for those who need it, then things would be very different. If the arable lands are utilized the way they should be used, then things will be very different. Once man understands that which he needs to do, they will walk very quickly and go back. They don't have to remain here. That they don't understand that which they need to do and do it properly is why they are all just accumulating here. So that's what we have is a massive accumulation of human spirits who need to experience as quickly as possible and continue on their journey. But to continue on their journey, they need the knowledge of creation. They need the knowledge of the laws of creation, like a map, which one may use to move from one point to the other. That the walk in the light of truth is of great help. Whether man makes use of it or not is his own business, but the help is already available. Where, in order to mature, you need to know that which you must do. Do not worry about what man will eat. Worry about the inner maturity of man. And as long as man improves himself in the right way, in accordance with these laws through which it came into existence, provisions are made by others within the scheme of things. Provisions are made such that he or she is able to draw inspiration, to draw of the powers, and mature very quickly, protect itself, and move off. Worrying about what happens in 10 years, in 20 years, is a complete waste of time. First, prepare yourself in such a way that you are ready to depart as soon as the time comes, such that you can find your way. Let not one worry about the other, but there is no one who doesn't have things that they themselves need to redeem, and each one must strive to purify themselves. Why should I worry about the others when I have not done my homework? In the process of trying to do your homework, you will understand that which your neighbor also is going through. In understanding lies the love.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your comprehensive answer there. I want to sort of change the topic a bit and, in a way, go back to when we started at the beginning of this show, where we were talking about unprecedented times, and you were saying that for you, you don't see these times at the moment as unprecedented times, except maybe in politics where, extreme things are going on. What I wanted to ask you is, our leaders, let's say political leaders, especially in the West, or some of them, not all of them, they seem to be, you know, let's say, standing for some big things for their countries, but then when you look at them from a moral point of view, their behavior, personal behavior, is not very, how can I say, what you'd expect of moral behavior is not really what you'd expect from a leader, or as an example. So, and many people, especially here in the West, say, well, that's not important. What's important is, that he is a good leader. He, sort of take care of the country. So I just wanted to check with you, is that really right, that people who are leaders, representing the country and showing representing the country, are, let's say, not so clean, not that everybody's clean anyway, but are not, let's say, even they're not even honest about what they have done in their private lives, which, they seem to be in denial, let's say, about that. And so, is that a good example, really, for any leader to be like that?
Again, thanks for that question. Two simple statements. The first is the motive behind the representative of a country who call themselves leaders. Many are unable to see the motives, but subsequently, by their activities, they are then forced to reveal their inner motive, such that a personality is now compelled to make a judgment. Whether they are honest, this should be revealed. The key thing now is that they are at a point where the consequences of their motives are now made manifest, such that many who are also constituents of that society may learn. Some others may sweep such aside. And that was why one gave the simple example of what had happened in Germany at that time, where there was no honesty, where there were murders and all sorts of things. The people were gullible. They were happy as long as these lies were told to them, as long as people were punished, even killed. They had no problem until it started touching them personally. And before long, the catastrophe of a world war then was precipitated. And what then happened? Then the people could not deny anymore. They now had to go through that which they themselves have supported. It happened before. It can happen again.
Thank you, Gregory, for highlighting that and sort of giving a warning to be alert for such, possibility, because anybody can be fooled. As you said, the intention is what we need to find out, because these people are not. Most of such people are not willing to reveal that in honest manner. It seems that the only way they, until they're exposed, we will never know really what the intention is. So, it's quite difficult to when somebody's not honest, how to work it out, what exactly they're up to. I mean, I don't want to say they're dishonest in the motivation of actually trying to do good for their country, but somehow how they want to achieve it. It's not always, let's say, a legitimate way to do it. So yeah, thank you. Mena, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on Gregory's recent response to the population explosion and how we have to make our way out of the earth and to move on to our spiritual origin. But I was just going to ask, I don't know if it's if we can be discussed at this session.
Yes.
The 1,000 years. I thought we had some 1,000-year reign, or where we could improve on ourselves before we could make a way to our spiritual hope. Would you be happy to discuss the millennium at some point?
Yes, I think. Well, we only have a couple of minutes at the moment.
To hold that discussion on a separate, as a separate topic. For the idea of these discussions is to make it simple. Bringing so many points makes it very complex. Only that which is simple can be absorbed very easily and then maybe united with others. But of course, one can discuss all these things. There are people who are listening for the first time. There are people who have been listening for quite some time, in which one has said, please examine this work and prepare yourself so you can find the answers for yourself and move forward. So one is always mindful that tokens are given so that they are simple enough for one to learn from. And then much later, maybe a topic is then discussed based on the initial preparation about the millennium, what it means. But of course, one may say, again and again, such questions the answers have been provided very clearly in the work in the light of truth.
Thank you, Gregory, for that. Now that we've come to the end of the show, so I'm going to ask each of us to say goodbye. Thank you, listeners, for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. The topic was tonight, unprecedented events and times. So thank you very much. We'll be back next week on Tuesday evening, as usual, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. 6 to 8 p.m. with a new topic. So I'm going to ask Mena, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Yeah, I think I had a good time. Bye-bye, listeners.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Gregory, anything you wish to say to the listeners?
We wish them well.
Thank you. So yes,